Good day to you, my friend. Welcome to the Goddess Breath podcast. I'm Dr. Mari Castle, and thank you for being here and listening. Today, I am following up with the last episode of Inanna's journey to the underworld. And this is quite a depth of a process. So I wanted to split these episodes into two parts to really bring in and emphasize certain points that make a big difference when it comes to, you think of the journey to the underworld as a death and rebirth process. Maybe not something you're familiar with, but it has to do with transformation. It has to do with when I talk about the butterfly. The butterfly basically dies in the cocoon and then rebirths. And we also, as human beings, can experience a transformation in our lives. Many people have, and it can look many different ways. But first, I want to start with a breathing technique. And today I thought that the billows breathing would be a great breath to do. Bellows breathing, like a bellow for a fire, bringing oxygen to the fire. And this is the bellows breathing is kind of from the chest area. And I'm not sure if I mentioned in the last episode that what we're talking here about in this process of Inanna's journey to the underworld is the throat chakra. In the previous episodes, I know I had brought in the heart chakra, but now we're into the throat chakra. And that's transformation. It's the ether element. And that has to do with transformation. I'm not sure what else to say about that. I'll say more as we go, but I want to just start out and let's do a little breathing together. This particular breath technique has to do with getting some kind of energy, right? So it helps with more focus, more alertness in the mental capacity. So if you need like a quick cup of coffee, you could just do the bellows breathing, and that will give you more awareness, alertness, and focus. And particularly, I'm thinking of Inanna. She's basically in the journey to the underworld, hanging on a peg to rot at this stage of where we are in the story. She needs some aware, alert energy, and she's got to be paying attention if she's going to make her way out. So here too, maybe there's a time in your life when you feel like you've got to just all of a sudden be alert. Like if you're driving, you have to be super alert, right? And then also just in our lives of different things going on, maybe you're spinning a lot of plates and you got to keep it all together. So this particular breath technique is really good for that. The only thing I want to say is that there are some contraindications to this one. So people that have high blood pressure and that have heart conditions, pregnancy is kind of always contraindicated. Not something I necessarily mentioned in this podcast for contraindications with breathing, but that should be a given. And then if you have headaches, sometimes this can make them worse. So because of the energy is going to the head. The idea then if you had migraines, you want to bring the energy down into the lower abdominal area. So what we're going to do is breathe in and out through the nose very quickly and forcefully. And the area of the body is focused on the chest, like I'm saying. So it looks like this. And this is different than the one technique I've shared recently in the solar plexus chakra energy, where it's the fire breath. That's very different. The emphasis is on the exhale. This emphasis is on both equal inhale and exhale. And it's meant to only be done for a couple of minutes. And it, it's just really good for kind of a wake up, to feel more alert. I use this one a lot in the summertime in Florida because it's so hot that it's helpful to just get some energy moving and blood flow into the head. So let's go ahead and do this. It'll just be a couple of minutes that we'll be doing it together. All right, I'm going to begin. Join in when you're ready. You can always go at your own pace. You don't have to go at my speed. So just keep that in mind. It's also good for clearing the nasal energy. If you have blockages, it's helpful for that. Since we're working on the chest here, try to keep the shoulder blades back and down. No, a minute seems very long when you're doing this particular technique, but just take a break if you need to and then go back to it. Just doing 30 more seconds here. All right. Ah, yes, I feel that stimulation here, which is really good for me to be going into this particular part of the story of Inanna and her uh, journey to the underworld. And she's at this stage from where I left off the last episode, is basically hanging on the peg to rot. But she knows that her servant, her holy servant, Ninshuber, will get help. And she calls to her Inanna's father, the god of wisdom, Enki, to come to Inanna's rescue, basically, to pull her out of the underworld. And Inanna and Enki are in a way bonded in that Inanna has passed her early initiatory rite of passage when she brought her gifts from Enki's temple and city, the gifts of the Holy May, to the her city, the city Uruk, and for the flourishing and thriving manifestation of what was needed for the people of the city of Uruk, that Inanna was so passionate to bring and offer. But now she's basically disintegrated, so to speak. She's bowed low in front of Arishka Gal, who fastened the eye of death with her, and I want to say naked and bowed low. So she's completely raw. And this could be an emotional feeling a vulnerability that we can experience. So just identifying it that way could be a dark night of the soul and deep depression, or a struggle with a really tough illness that there's maybe no clear vision of overcoming, or there's no hope, or not a diagnosis, but no healing possibility that's available in medicine. Many different ways this could look for us personally, but for Inanna, she's basically, um, done. However, after 3 days and 3 nights, that Enki, the god of wisdom, brings these particular creatures, or he sends them to the underworld. And these are the creatures of the water of life and the food of life. And they're non-sexual, androgynous creatures. And I'll just share, I have my book here, but mostly I have all of this in me, but I just want to share a couple of things that they confront Ereshkigal, the goddess of the underworld, which is who fastened the eye of death on Inanna. And they ask her, well, she says, what do you want with your coming to the underworld? And they basically point to the corpse and say they want her. And she says, well, I don't know. She looks at them and she says, I don't know. And then it's a long chain of lyrics, poetic lyrics that describe Ereshkigal basically in labor. And she's moaning and groaning and making all these sounds and noises. So it's been considered to be identified with our suffering, just our own human suffering. And then they represent just being there and hearing and listening and like mirroring Ereshkigal's moans and groans. So when she moans and groans, they moan and groan. So they're kind of mirroring what her process and experience is. And what this does then is it creates compassion in Ereshkigal. And she then starts to recognize, oh, okay, well, maybe it's okay to allow Inanna to return from the underworld. I think I can consider this thought. But no one returns from the underworld like unmarked, so to speak. And Ereshkigal requests that Inanna must find a replacement for her in the underworld. Okay, so having said that, I just need to go back just a step and make a point about the fact that these creatures mirroring Ereshkigal and her recognizing her own sense of compassion was an intentional method of producing empathy, and that just sitting for somebody in a time of suffering or need or an illness or at someone's bedside that is dying, or even like I've brought up in the past, people who are having suicidal tendencies, and all of the gist of that you can probably understand what I mean by saying those couple of things, that it's an important part of our human beingness to be available as a support. That is why I feel like part of the reason why we're here as human beings, to be here for each other, to kind of lift each other up. And we all maybe have gone through that for the most part, where we just wish we had somebody that was there, not to have to say anything, fix anything, just to be present for that person so that they feel that presence, and it gives them an impetus to want to overcome what their challenge is, gives them hope, it gives them um, just like a light at the end of the tunnel. Gives them the light at the end of the tunnel that they can see forward and want to move towards that light. So that's what takes place. And then Inanna is now lifted up and about to return to her city. She has Minshabur, her holy servant that sent for Enki, the god of wisdom, right there at her side as the gates of the underworld are open and Inanna emerges. And then, immediately, she's got the underworld creatures at her side saying, okay, you got to find somebody to replace you. We're not letting you off this hook here until you do. And immediately it's like, Ninshaber, no way, I'm not going to subject Ninshaber to the underworld. She's been at my side. She's been my saving grace. So she's, path forward walking along. She's disheveled and has, quite the look about her. She's been through a process and maybe pale and a little bit shaken. And she then just emerging like at the edges of her city can see that everything is still happening as it was when she left. There's been no uh, time of grief, right, for what was Inanna's imminent death. And she sees her husband, Dumuzid, and he is just sitting on the luxurious chase lounge. I always love to just say this story. He's got the maidens kind of feather fanning him. He's got the grapes. He's in his royal garb and nothing amiss. And Inanna is really bothered by that. So she immediately, like, you can take him. Wow. He hears this. He sees Inanna. He's a little bit shocked. And then he hears you can take him, and he kind of innately knows what's happening and takes off, runs for fear of his life, because he is not interested either in going to the underworld. Even though this may be a call for him, he is not interested. No thanks. I'm not going there. Whatever demons I have to face, I'm not interested. I would rather keep them in the shadow, so to speak. There are people in the world that are, and that's their prerogative, right? If they're not interested in taking a look within, going inward, want to clear out different times in their life that maybe that they didn't do the right thing or whatever it is. It's the shadow energy. We all have it. It's just a part of being human. And then that's why we want to have a mirror, or that's why we want to be able to, surrender, right? Sometimes it's just necessary to surrender. And if we don't surrender, sometimes that's when the illness happens, or the car accidents, or any kind of accident or injury, when we have to just completely slow down, we get kind of smacked in the head. And I'm using that as a metaphor to wake up, right? For us to wake up. So Dumuzid then runs for his life. Um, there's a lot to this part of the story as well. He has a lot of dreams that are disturbing dreams for him. He's hiding, and the creatures are trying to find him. Finally, he surrenders, and at that moment that he surrenders, a beautiful thing happens. His sister, Dumuzid's sister, Geshtinana, Geshi, Geshtinana, comes forward as a representation of compassion. So she's his compassion. And she says, you know what? I'm willing to take half of the year of being in the underworld for Dumuzid to be up in the upper world with Inanna, to have that balance of the masculine and feminine, and also to continue to keep the city of Uruk thriving and flourishing. So she's willing to herself go to the underworld, and then every year it'll cycle where Dumuzid goes for half the year and Geshtinana goes for half the year. And this then became the um, winter summer seasons, where we go into the depths in the winter, and in the summer we come forth, and there's, at the beginning of springtime and flourishing forward and the growth and the manifestation, and then in the fall, the harvest of our efforts and hard work from agriculture or whatever it is. We think of grapes. The wineries have that really profound sense of seasonal um, growth, and then the manifestation of the grapes. So I hope that makes sense and you understand that. And that's also the cycle of death and rebirth in our lives that can take place, not necessarily any particular way of that is cycling or period in our life that happens. It's all individual and unique to what that looks like, and two, that some people just aren't ready to surrender, and that when it's time, for their letting go is when they let go and they leave their body, and then they do not return. So it's very different in every case of every human being, but that there is the possibilities to have the profound shifts of transformation, death, and rebirth experiences. And I want to say, as a collective for humanity, that we can experience that collectively. And I feel like that is part of what's happening in the world today, that we're collectively going through a death and rebirth. And that, for me, particularly, my perspective and viewpoint is that's why it's good to do so much breathing. We need the breathing for the rebirth, right? Think of labor pains and mothers doing what was called the Lamaze breathing, or still is called that. But that helps bring that transformation um, more graceful, more with more ease and grace, to allow for that new outlook, new perspective, healing, right? That can happen in our day and age. So I encourage you to go ahead and continue to learn about breathing techniques. I encourage you to think about a time in your life when you have heard a call and how that was for you. And, did you listen, or did you say, I'm not ready? Either way is okay. There's no judgment. And that, or in the future, if that were to come for you, just thinking about the consideration of what that will be like for you to have that sense of surrender. It's not easy. It's not for everybody, and it can be, yet at the same time, super profound in one's life, life changing. Right. So the holotropic breathwork also can do that. It can be life changing for a lot of people. And I just want to mention again that I do holotropic breathwork sessions with people in groups. I do them quite regularly in St. Petersburg, Florida. As I'm recording this episode, I have one coming up in just a couple of weeks. And then I'm also, you can look at my website, breathwork9.com is my current website, which will probably change here soon. And that I have them scheduled there, so you can always look. Also, there's a retreat coming up, and I'm going to be doing more and more weekend or longer retreats, 4 and 5 day retreats very soon, starting at the end of what is this year, 2025, and that those will give more time and space for people to really deepen in, go inward, to really allow for that inner exploration, that deep inner exploration. Yeah, so take a look if you're interested in those sorts of things. And I want to add one more thing before I end this episode, is that in the next episode, I'm super excited to have another guest on the podcast. Dr. Ren Butler is my colleague who has studied archetypal astrology his whole life. He's also a Grothian holotropic breathwork person. We've worked a lot together, and I'm super excited to have him on the show as well. So I hope you can join for that, and that'll be coming soon. And after he is on, then we're going to get into Inanna as Venus, as the morning and evening star. She was revered back in ancient times, and still today, I revere her as Venus, the planet Venus. Thank you all. Thank you so much for being here, and have a beautiful day. Be well.